This is The John Oakley Show, exclusively on AM 640.
Baroness Vazi, who's claimed not just that prejudice against Muslims exists, but, in her words, is uncontroversial.
Because there are a minority of people who commit criminal acts who come from the faith of Islam, that somehow means that it is fair game to have a go at the community as a whole.
And at the heart of one of London's biggest Muslim communities in Whitechapel, it's a widespread concern.
They never say the good side about Islam, and they always look at the negative side about it, and they try to...
All right, well, that's a clip from the BBC, and this is the woman who's the member of the House of Lords in the UK, first Muslim woman to sit in the British cabinet, and warned yesterday discrimination against Muslims in Britain has become somehow socially acceptable, and it has to be tackled. In other words, don't be critical of Muslims. And in directing your, let's say, critique towards these extremists, in some way you're tarring the whole community. And she's saying it's just the rank and file Britons who are part of the problem. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, lady, wouldn't you be better advised to look internally into your community and saying, why is there a problem? Why is there this perceived and real threat? I mean, they had a bombing on their subway system back in 2005, and it's probably something that's misguided. Her critique of saying, you know, and this is where we hear in this country, this city, you know, that, well, if you bring it up, it's somehow being bigoted or prejudiced against the community. Well, isn't it a fair criticism to table to say if there's elements that are going to be radicalized, it's coming from within the community, so the community has got to take matters into its own hands. I mean, we're willing to help you, we're willing to extend a hand, but don't start slapping that hand down going, well, you're alienating us. You're responsible for the alienation because you're being critical of our community. This is why I think this woman is taking the wrong approach to it, and she's misjudging the whole dynamic at play here. I wanted to get some of your thoughts on that here in a moment, and, you know, when it comes to being critical, you know, even to the point of pointing out that there are radical elements. Some would say, well, you're just ginning the story up because you're bigoted. And you're going after the whole community. Like it's the problem of the outliers. When in fact, I think it's a problem that the community itself is not recognizing that they do have a problem. And, you know, sorry, but if you do have radicals in your midst or kids that are prone to being seduced into extremism, that is an internal problem. As I said, we're willing to help and to understand, but don't criticize us for being critical. My point. I hope I'm making sense to you. It certainly seems to be something that's reared its head as a debate in the UK, where we're joined again by the leader of the English Defence League, Tommy Robinson. Mr. Robinson, good to have you back in the program. Hello.
Hello, how you doing?
We're good. Now, I'm curious, one of the things that brought your name back into prominence in the last couple of days, this U.S. pastor Terry Jones from Florida, who wanted to burn the Quran back in a few months ago, and it caused quite the stir internationally. You had invited him to come to speak in the UK, but you've since disinvited him. What was the reason for withdrawing the offer?
We hadn't invited him. That's something the media have said again. We didn't invite him. He contacted us. He asked if he could come to our demonstration, if he could speak. We agreed in principle until we looked into him. And then when we looked into him in depth, we saw a lot of his views. We disagree with a lot of his views. Whilst we agree with his views on that there is an extremist problem within Islam, the rest of his views and the things that he stands for and his church stands for, we just don't as an organisation. We welcome everyone from different colours and creeds. We're not homophobic. We just want to live and let live, and that's what we want. We just want to be able to live as normal citizens without fear in our country, which is what we're standing for. So that's why we then put out a statement saying, sorry, Pastor Terry Jones, we don't want you to come to England, because we don't want you to speak on our stage or share a platform on our stage due to some of your other views with regards to, I think he's against a lot of people.
All right, well, listen, now, you also, on the last occasion we had to speak, said you're not anti-Muslim either. I mean, because you had been tarred with a brush of bigotry that you had directed.
Well, that's because, as we see, anyone who says anything against Islam is automatically anti-everything, and that's everyone jumps on the bandwagon. There's a problem within Islam. We haven't caused the problem, we haven't created the problem. The problem is embedded in that religion. It needs to sort itself out, and all we're doing is talking about it. And automatically everyone says you're bigots, you're racists. Well, we're not. We're just highlighting the issues that need highlighting because everyone's too scared to highlight them. Because as you've just heard, when you highlight them, people like Baroness Vazi come out and automatically say you're the problem. It's our fault. It's all our fault. That's all we hear. It's not our fault. It's not our fault. We just want to live and let live. We're not being able to live and let live because we've got people planning to blow us up on a weekly basis. We've got extremist Islamists on our streets day in, day out. We're having to live next door to them in our houses. So that there is a problem, and we've got a right to speak about this problem, and that's what we're doing. We're highlighting it, we're speaking about it. I don't know if you just saw over there on your news with regards to in England, they've just now, it's the tip of the iceberg with to do with these Muslim paedophile gangs that have been grooming our children. Now, we've been banging that drum and highlighting that for 2 years, and no one dares speak about it. And now you've got politicians talking about it, and we truly feel the only reason why they dare talk about it is because of the English Defence League. Because we've been telling people on stages in city centres for the last 2 years that our youth are being raped and pimped by gangs that are purposely targeting them because they're non-Muslim.
All right, so what you're saying, let me just cut to the chase because I got a tight timeline, but what you're doing is confronting the extremism. You want to live and let live. Some would say what you're doing, though, is inciting. You're just ratcheting up the rhetoric here, and it's divisive and it's counterproductive, and there ought to be another approach. How can you defend your...
There is no other approach. We've sat and waited for that approach for 15, 20 years. We've waited for them to sort the problems out. We've waited for the political leaders to sort these issues out, to sort these problems out so that we know where we belong. We're working class people. We're the bottom of the food chain. We don't want to run this country, but the people who are running it, the leaders of our communities who are supposed to be leading us, they're ignoring it. They're brushing it under the carpet because they're scared to talk about it. So although I agree that some people can question our tactics for coming out on the street and demonstrating, we've been left with no other choice.
All right, and so
no other choice.
This British cabinet woman, the first Muslim woman to sit in the British cabinet, is way offside in critiquing British society or Britons like yourself for being critical of Islam, saying you got to clean up your own house, get your own house in order. She's offside.
We have a reason to be critical of Islam. We have a reason, and that's it. And so it's not our, as I said, it's not our fault. It's not our fault. They need to split. They need, when we've got, when all you have, I can't see how the government don't see it and politicians don't see it. 90% of the imams in this country can't speak English. They are trained and they learn their religion in Saudi Arabia. When you look at what they're teaching in Saudi Arabia and look at their human rights atrocities, you look at what's happening. You can't even get into Saudi Arabia with a Bible. And we wonder why we've got this extremist form of Islam being bred in our country.
I got to let you go on that note. I appreciate your time as always, Mr. Robinson. Just touching base and clarifying some points. The leader of the English Defence League will come back, take